Another revolution around the sun. Woo! It's a time of new beginnings, but let's not forget the steps that we took to get to this point. The ones that made us laugh, cry, cheer, and think. It may be time to close the book of 2023, but let's end that book on the ultimate epilogue. The best of the best. Now, let's draw a couple of lines in the sand here and now. Let's remember, I'm not a professional film critic. My picks are going to be based entirely on my own criteria, which is not a hard science, and doesn't follow any particular formula that a more respected film critic may do. So if you don't see a highly praised movie by a highly respected director on here, don't be shocked, because either I didn't see the movie or I don't agree that it was that good. For example, don't expect to see Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 on here because it's not a complete story yet. Or Killers of the Flower Moon. Didn't see it. Didn't want to sit through a near 4-hour movie. So just bear that in mind when you watch this video. So, let's get this party started. This is my top 10 films of 2023. Before we hit the list itself, here are my honorable mentions for the following. Best Sci-Fi. Paradise. Age is taken from a man's wife and given to the daughter of a CEO. He kidnaps her to take back her age. Its moral ambiguity is constantly played with and was a serious emotional and mental test. Not everyone liked it, but I sure did.
I don't know what that was, but that wasn't me.
They cloned Tyrone. John Boyega discovers that unknown people are cloning him for unknown reasons. It's a trippy flick. The support cast steals the show. Sure, the bad guys don't make sense, but it's a wild ride. Best Romance.
Ask a little question.
I'm interested in people's messes.
What makes you think I've got a mess?
Everyone has a mess.
Rye Lane. A pair of heartbroken young people find each other and help each other through their mutual breakups. It's cute, it's charming, very well written, if not a bit bizarre as far as its camera work goes. And Best Comedy.
So, Bert, don't show fear. Wow.
The Machine. A troubled stand-up comedian and his dad, Mark Hamill, is taken hostage by the Russian mafia. It's outrageous, it's weirdly heartwarming, the Russian woman is a babe, and it had me howling with laughter. And who doesn't love Mark? Number 10. Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. What a phenomenal delight! This is what we need more of in the cinemas. Swords and sworcery! And man, this was a whole hell of a lot of fun, and I love the cast. Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Sophia Lillis, Hugh Grant, co-written and co-directed by comedy greats Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly. Man, this was teed up for me to fall in love with, and boy howdy did I! It doesn't hide that this is a high fantasy world. You have monsters, you have magic, you have sweeping landscapes and netherworldly settings, and best of all, tubby dragons that can't fly worth a damn. All of that is great on its own, but none of that would matter all that much if we didn't have charming characters to follow, and this delivers. The chemistry between Pine, Rodriguez, Grant, Lillis, and a surprisingly fun performance out of Justice Smith. Sorry, ever since the Jurassic World sequels, I have not enjoyed his acting. But he was pretty good here. They all did a fantastic job. And I was invested in the story. Hugh Grant is a turncoat, essentially manipulates Chris's daughter in believing that he abandoned her, and spends his time trying to recruit allies to infiltrate the kingdom again and sabotage Grant's reign. I was sucked in. The only thing I didn't like was the daughter character. The girl was old enough to know what her father was all about, never questions that him abandoning her would be wildly out of character, and simply believes the lies that Grant tells her. What a dumb girl. And there's also kind of a hint that the main antagonist serves an even greater threat that gets no real screen time. Definitely trying to emulate Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars, but doesn't quite leave the same impact. Frankly, it's easy to forget that element entirely, so if I just reminded you that existed right this second, fret not, for you will forget about it again in 10 minutes. But those are small problems in the grand scheme of just getting so engrossed in this world. I love it, and anyone who says otherwise, you just don't like fun. But I do really enjoy this, and I am happy to put it out as my number 10.
If the plan fails, the existing plan, I make a new plan.
So you make plans that fail?
No.
He also plays the lute.
Hogan, not relevant.
Sharing the number 9 spot is Asteroid City and Poor Things. Wildly different movies that scratch the very same itch. Asteroid City is like cotton candy for the eyes, whereas Poor Things is like a Salvador Dali painting for the eyes. The Wes Anderson flick is consistently more fun, I think, whereas the Yorgos Lanthimos flick, sorry if I mispronounced that, probably has the best performances. Both are very wacky for different reasons, but are utterly unique viewings. If you like Wes Anderson, then I think you'll like Asteroid City. I've heard more than a few folks say that it's his best work. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. All I know is I love how tactically low the production is, since it's a reenactment of a play that Edward Norton's character wrote. It has bizarre acting, wonderful chemistry between the actors, and fast-paced dialogue with the signature monotone inflection. Combine that with a fun little stop-motion alien that this movie kind of revolves around, and that's a recipe for a cutesy time.
I told you 50 times. The alien picked up the asteroid.
Alleged alien.
I know what I saw.
It's called a meteorite.
Poor Things is just as nuts as its visual aesthetic, but no less entertaining and engaging. Every single one hits serious high marks, and to make light of Lanthimos' directing would be a serious insult. And the writing from Tony McNamara, the whole team behind The Favorite, dude, this was always gonna be something worth checking out. I might say that the sex scenes get a bit excessive, and Bella Baxter doesn't seem to have a great deal of personal problems, just a long sequence of realizations that she's privileged, wants to be a good person, but doesn't experience any personal hardship. With all that said, it's a stupendous piece of work from both cast and crew.
Oh.
I love bonkers movies like these, and kind of find myself wishing that we would get more of them, but also kind of gatekeep so that only these artists can do it, because anyone else who tries is just gonna fall flat on their faces. Number 8. True Spirit. Despite its hokey title, this biopic of Jessica Watson, who was a mere 16-year-old baby that circumnavigated, the globe, was a seriously awesome viewing. And if you're in your 30s or older and suddenly feel like you're a lazy good-for-nothing, it's because you are. Get a kayak and do something with your life, ya bum! Tegan Croft does a phenomenal job, starting off with this peppy-go-lucky attitude with what she's about to embark on, with the skills and relative experience to back it up. There's never a moment where you don't feel for this girl. The scale of what she wants to do, doing it alone, saying goodbye to her family, and enduring every single challenge that she faces on her journey is nothing short of harrowing. And when she overcomes them, it feels so triumphant and is genuinely one of the best feel-good films of the year. Not everything is a 1-to-1 ratio of the true events. Cliff Curtis's character is completely fabricated for the film for some reason, and there's a sequence where Jessica is dead in the water for several days due to a lack of wind, which never happened. Personally, when it comes to true events, I hate it when movies do that, but when a majority of it is factual, I can't be too mad at it. Which is nuts, because the moments I thought were made up are actually real and changed how I saw the entire flick. So why is this better than, say, Asteroid City and Poor Things? Well, for one thing, it's mostly a true story, and it's about a 16-year-old girl that sailed the dang planet. How can you not admire that? I adore this, and it has never left my mind since I saw it. Fantastic performances, wonderful tension, and definitely gave me a sense of adventure.
Did you see the scar right now?
Yeah, pretty special.
Really special.
Number 7. Sisu. What happens when you have insane action sequences, a scary old Finnish dude, and drop all of that in a World War II setting where the bad guys are Nazis? You get one hell of a thrill ride and that's all you need! I've seen films with budgets of over $100 million do less and look worse than this. The budget here is less than $10 million. To be a little more precise, it's about $6.5 million. This should have been dumped on a knockoff streaming platform and skipped over by the masses. But no, this got a full-on theatrical release, and thank the almighty gods of motion pictures for it. The main protagonist has only one line, spending his entire screen time hauling around a large deposit of gold and playing the most violent game of keep away from the Nazis. From stabbing dudes in the head with a knife, lobbing active landmines at them and exploding like giant red water balloons, to full-on dangling from an airplane by a freaking pickaxe, this gives you nothing but a bloody good time. Yeah, okay, the climax gets a wee bit over the top, but to condemn the entire experience over a single inexplicable moment would be the silliest thing in the world. Where it shines the brightest is everywhere around it. You love to hate the villains. You love how they get their comeuppance. And you cheer every time the hero dishes out punishment. I'm an action junkie, so of course I would enjoy this. It deserves respect, needs to be seen. It's one of the best action movies of the year.
He was a Finnish commander, lost his home and his family in the war. He became a one-man death squad.
Number 6. Extraction 2. So this is what happens when you're not horking down feminist juice. You get a damn awesome action flick that's fair to both men and women, but is unabashedly a dick flick. While not as impressive as Sisu in terms of what it can get away with for its budget, it makes up for it in spades by doing what it does with the budget if it did have that Netflix money. The action, as always, is freaking amazing. The moment Chris Hemsworth enters the prison and extracts the mom and her 2 kids, it's so expertly filmed, making it seem like one long action sequence with no cuts a la 1917, but how seamless the transitions were, it was gorgeous. Yeah, every so often you can tell the actors and stunt guys were counting their steps, but the hard-hitting choreography and spectacle alone made you not give the slightest crap. Sure, it's not an emotional powerhouse, but Hemsworth does give an earnest performance, trying to convince this boy of what the dynamic of fathers and sons should be. It's pretty solid, despite that he's playing the gruff, stern, no-nonsense action dude. I've seen a few people say that this is better than the original. That is a very strong possibility. The action is a step above, which is saying quite a bit since the action in that one was no slouch either. In that regard, yes, the action is better. As to the more dramatic beats, not sure about that one. Both movies deal in themes of fatherhood and see Hemsworth bonding with some teenage boy. I gravitate toward the original more in that way due to the kid being a lot more sympathetic and the bond between him and Hemsworth being much more heartfelt. In the sequel, the teen boy is a bit of a shit stain and needs a good slap upside the head. But I think it's more of an issue of the boy being more complex. He's been manipulated by his gangster father into believing things a certain way. What a family means, what it means to be a son's father, the responsibilities that entails, things like that. But at the same time, he has a loving mother who wants better for her 2 children, so it's clear that he's wrestling with his own inner demons. I guess it depends on your personal flavor, and sequels always have to do something different so it doesn't feel like a copy and paste of the previous entry. And frankly, the more I talked about this kid, the more I kind of liked it. So why is this number 6? Why do I like this more than Sisu? I mean, to be fair, Sisu is a much more impressive film given its budget. Also, what with the critical acclaim and financial success it saw in theaters. That's a lot more cheerworthy. but I would say that Sisu didn't keep me as emotionally engaged as this one did. This was still really awesome though. Good enough to be in my top 10, but just narrowly misses out on being in my top 5. But if we're not including Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, this is, in my opinion, one of the best, if not my favorite, action movie of the year. Well, almost my favorite. We'll get to that.
If he went away, your mother would take you and your sister and give you a life outside of all that. Not stay trapped with him.
A good son is supposed to stay with his father.
A good father wouldn't make him.
Oh yeah, the top 5. Let's make a thing out of it. And the tradition is always a Bellini. Never had butter champagne before. I always thought they just made Chardonnay, but I guess I'm wrong. This must be the most disgusting thing that my coworkers have seen. My most senior bartender hates champagne, and my current bar manager hates peach schnapps, so, yummy. Anyway, top 5. Before we carry on with the list, here are some honorable mentions for the following. Best Action.
미안. 마트 문 닫을 시간이라.
Kill Boksoon. This South Korean action flick follows a mother who pissed off her assassin's organization and fights the lot of them. John Wick, but South Korean and starring a woman. It's badass with great action. Speaking of John Wick,
You're going to die. Maybe not.
John Wick Chapter 4. I know it's probably sacrilege to not include this in the top 10, but having been the 4th installment, other action flicks really tried to stand out and deserve to be spotlit. Make no mistake though, this was awesome.
Aber Leutchen hat überlebt. Nachbarn haben mir geschrieben, sie haben sie zu sich genommen.
Blood and Gold, a German cousin to Sisu. Though not as impressive, it's no less stylish in its action sequences and has quite a lot of personality. It's not the best, but it sure is one of the best. Best Drama.
เดี๋ยวนี้มันก็เงี้ยป้ามันต้องทำทุกอย่างให้พิเศษไงจะได้ขายได้แพง
มันแพงเพราะมันพิเศษ หรือมันพิเศษเพราะมันแพงวะ
Hunger. Pretty sure it's a cooking version of Whiplash as made in Thailand. It's intense, incredible acting, and has a horror lining to it sometimes. Freaking great.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world? Chances are near zero.
Oppenheimer. Despite its 3-hour runtime, it earns it by being phenomenally written and manages to keep me engaged all the way through. Definitely gonna get a ton of well-deserved Oscar noms. Number 5. Renfield. Oh yeah. Sometimes I forget that Nick isn't just an extraordinarily entertaining actor. Sometimes he's legitimately good. And every once in a while, he's the whole package. And boy howdy was he the whole package here. This was a role I guarantee you he was born to play. Nicolas Cage's Dracula. That sounds like it could have easily gone sideways or been the most amazing thing in the world. And I am thrilled to say that it was basically everything I could have hoped for. Sure, it's not subtle about being an allegory for an abusive relationship, but who cares? Nick Cage is Dracula! And Nicholas Hoult is no slouch either as the titular character, Renfield. His action scenes are so violent, and yet so much fun. Hard-hitting fisticuffs, well choreographed and shot, solid stunts, lots of blood, and a whole hell of a lot of gore. The acting is wonderful from the support cast as well. Ben Schwartz and awesomely enough Awkwafina, and my personal favorite, Shora Agdashlu, who is criminally not one of Dracula's wives. Frustrating missed opportunity. The writing is superb, hilarious, and staggeringly heartfelt in a very light kind of way. Ain't saying it's a tearjerker, but you care about Renfield and you want the best for him. So why is this better than Extraction 2? From a filmmaking standpoint, it's not. From an entertainment value standpoint, definitely superior. Nick as Dracula alone makes it worth it as well. But yeah, it's the fact that I saw it with a friend that elevates it. So it's a nice memory we both share. I have no idea if this is getting a sequel. It wasn't exactly a blockbuster. But even if it does, who knows how that's going to go down. Maybe this should be just a one and done and let it garner a cult classic following. At least that's what I hope happens. In any case, I adored this, made all the better that I saw it with a dear friend. Thanks, Serena.
I am Dracula.
Okay, obviously we're dealing with a little bit more than just narcissism here.
Number 4. Johnny. Thou shalt watch a religious movie and not die of cringe. Who would have thought? Maybe, just maybe, PureFlix should take some notes. From what I can tell, the true events this depicts are done justice. At the very least, I can't find anything that says to the contrary. What I find particularly funny is seeing reviews online from religious folks that are all like, yes, only God can defeat the devil within, or some such. To each their own, I guess, but as a dude who frowns upon religion, I don't think this was about that. Or maybe it's how religion should be. We're not deep-throating God's holy light the entire time. The story is about compassion, empathy, forgiveness, and not squandering second chances. None of that is exclusive to religion. In my eyes, there's nothing more empowering than perseverance through hard work and determination by one's own drive. And nothing dilutes the power of the human spirit more than a fantastical invisible man in the sky. I think this movie knows that and makes God take a back seat. Beyond that, the performances are stellar. The two leads have incredible chemistry, the writing is wonderful and warms your heart. Keep the tissue box close by. So why is this number 4 on my list? Much as I loved Renfield, it had plenty going for it and met those expectations. Johnny was a cautious viewing, as religious movies tend to get really preachy and not actually tell a story. It's one thing to actually tell a good story, but to make it so good that it makes me have faith in humanity, that's a whole level of respect I couldn't ignore. But it misses out on being number 3 due to the next entry being similar, having a lot going against it and exceeding expectations. This movie is just not quite as impactful. Definitely one of the best foreign films of the year, but not quite the best one. There's 2 more entries to go before we get to that. In any case, though, I love this.
Prawdziwą wartość człowieka widać tam, gdzie jest prawdziwy ludzki dramat.
Number 3. Evil Dead Rise.
You will not be able to sleep. The success of this one has awakened Raimi and Campbell from their ancient slumber. I was impressed, like the others before it. Minute by minute, I was hooked.
God, bro, chill.
Yeah, so I kind of like this one. I already have a dedicated review on this, so I'm going to keep it short. I loved it. I love the writing. I love the characters, especially the Deadeye-possessed mom and the heroic sister. Even the kid characters were pretty solid. It's a stressful, freaky watch and succeeded in doing something new, but still retained the spirit of the original flicks. And that ending. That H.P. Lovecraftian ending, dear God. If I think about it too much, I still have trouble sleeping at night. Dead by dawn, but never felt more alive.
Dead by dawn! Dead by dawn! Dead by dawn!
Number 2. Godzilla -1. I am not, strictly speaking, a Godzilla fan. I have seen the original Gojira, of course. Maybe 1 or 2 episodes of the original Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Obviously, the 98 Matthew Broderick film. The sequel, the vastly superior animated sequel series. Not gonna lie, I still kind of dig that even today. And yeah, the more recent Sony Monsterverse ones. And that's basically it. Nothing against the franchise, it just wasn't that thing that I grew up with, sadly. And I do mean that sadly. Because I am looking at my younger self right now, and I am solemnly apologizing. Like, now, there's an empty hole in my soul that I didn't even know was there. I'm sorry, baby me, you deserved better. And also, this is my indication that it's not just me, as an outsider looking in, liking a movie without knowing the previous entries, without knowing its history. When other bigger named content creators are saying relatively the same thing,
yeah! I really dug this movie. I dug it because I'm not nostalgically attached to Godzilla. One of my favorites of the year? Yes.
So I'm going to cut to the chase and say, it's good. That's good with like 100 O's. I've watched Godzilla films since I was 11 or 12. I've seen them all. And this one I have no hesitation saying is the best one.
This is an amazing movie that all of you should go out and see right now. It is that good. Let me preface this. I'm a big Godzilla fan, but I think that this might actually be the best film of the year.
I admit I'm not the world's biggest fan of the Godzilla films. I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoy a Godzilla movie. Everybody's just going to rave about it because that's what you're supposed to do. These smaller foreign films with lower budgets, like 15 million, is what they made this movie for. Still, when I sat in that theater last night, I didn't do it outwardly, but inside I'm kind of like this. Show me, you know, kind of thing. Guys, this movie is great.
Then along came a low-budget monster movie from Japan that politely introduced itself and said, "Hey, fancy another Godzilla film?" Not really, I thought to myself. So I sat down with my bucket of popcorn and my pint of rum, and by golly, I haven't been this entertained since my granddad got his beard caught in the food blender. Here is a crazy fact, ladies and gentlemen of Hollywood. If you give your audience a compelling story with likable characters, then you don't have to work so hard to distract them with flashy visuals because they don't need to be distracted. They're already having fun.
If they're also the ones saying that this is one of the best entries in the franchise, or just straight up saying the best, I don't think it's just me anymore. This was awesome! One of the main things that always made me wary about seeing Godzilla movies is the penchant for them to have human characters that I don't care about, or are just as campy and silly that they'd eventually become memes. As for more modern takes, specifically Sony's Monsterverse, the human drama was always the most uninteresting. This is generally mitigated since the action scenes were good, and that's all I really wanted. What this did, however, was conflate the stereotype in my head that Godzilla films aren't inherently good outside of Gojira, in part because they're monster brawlers and nothing more. Maybe that's all fine and dandy in Japan, and maybe that's something children could get into, but as a grown man who thinks the glory days of good Godzilla films are long gone, they weren't appealing. And all this coming from a dude who's barely seen the lot of them. Boy, don't I feel like a dumbass today. That's what makes this installment so amazing. The human drama is what sells it. I care about the main characters. I care about what they're doing and why. In fact, I got so engrossed in the characters that I legitimately cried in a few scenes. I was that hooked. They're flawed, they're relatable, you sympathize with them, all that good stuff. I won't pretend to know how much screen time that the titular big guy has. I guess most of the more serious Godzilla films have him clocked in at 15 to 20 minutes, I don't know. But I feel like in order for him to feel special, his appearance should be limited to a certain degree. And I believe that was achieved. Every time Godzilla appears, it's a spectacle. From sheer terror to awe-inspiring carnage and destruction, it does everything that I've seen stateside, but done way better. You know, I actually kind of had a hard time placing this originally. It started off all the way in the back of my top 10 list, but I just kept finding reasons why it was better than X, Y, and Z. So, why did it stop at number 2? Well, let's get this out of the way first. If you do declare this as your number 1 favorite film of the year, as the best one, I get it. I ain't arguing. It deserves to be on anyone's number 1. And for all intents and purposes, I do kind of think that this is the best film of the year, as my number 2s tend to be. But it's just not my favorite. My favorite is one that you've likely not even heard of. And it's so much more unique than Godzilla Minus One. Oh, make no mistake, this is a fantastic Godzilla film. But I've seen Godzilla do his thing. I expected something good, and I got something great. But let's look at the film that made the King of the Monsters my silver medal winner. Before we hit my number 1, here are my final honorable mentions for Best Horror.
Bunny, she doesn't know who you are. She doesn't know who I am. She doesn't know who anyone is.
She does know who I am.
No, she doesn't, Mia.
Run, Rabbit, Run. This little girl thinks she's the reincarnation of her mother's sister who went missing when they were children. It's freaky, it's well acted, not a bad ride from the land down under.
Now say, talk to me.
Talk to me.
Talk to me. Australia was on a roll. A haunted party game gets a little too real when a teen girl is haunted by evil spirits that almost killed her best friend's little brother. Anyone would have played this game, which is where the true horror comes in. Definitely worth the hype.
Sin castigo no hay salvación.
Tin and Tina. Adopted albino twins are super religious, do weird things, and kill people, all believing that it's divine. You never truly know how aware they are of their devilish deeds, but just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it absolutely does. Twisted and engaging. Zom 100, Bucket List of the Dead. A dude hates his job so much that a zombie apocalypse is the ultimate salvation to live life to the fullest. Die-hard fans may tell me the anime is better, and it kind of is, but that doesn't negate the fun that I personally had. And my number 1 favorite film of 2023 is No One Will Save You. This is far and away one of the most unique films that I have seen in a while, at least in terms of its execution and sheer audacity. I mean, have we seen an alien home invasion movie before? Sure, Signs. But, depending on how you feel about that film, let's say you didn't like it. Imagine if it was good. Let's say you did like it. Imagine if it was significantly better. Yeah. Hack the cast from 4 main characters to just 1. Make that one character a tiny framed young woman throw in some Diet Home Alone style traps for self-defense, sprinkle in some Invasion of the Body Snatchers, make E.T.'s fingers scary as shit, and keep a grand total of 5 meaningful lines of dialogue. Once you do that, you got yourself a special little flick here. It combines so much and yet does such an amazing and impressive job with all of that. Now, because of the obscurity of this, I'm going to talk a little more about it than I did in my rapid fire, so a quick recap of what this movie's about. For one thing, it stars Caitlin Dever. Book smart, she's great. She plays Bryn. She lives alone and is completely shunned by the townspeople due to a dark history. One night, she gets an uninvited guest in the form of an alien and just tries to survive. There's obviously a lot that I skimmed over, but that's kind of the gist of it. I really want to make a deep dive about this soon. But in any case, at the core of the story though, it's about trauma and grief. Caitlin Dever is nothing short of phenomenal. There isn't 1 second of this story that I didn't care about Bryn. She's clearly just trying to move on and live in her hometown as normal as possible and be as friendly as possible. But clearly, wounds haven't healed and forgiveness hasn't been given. She's isolated in her remote home, keeping herself busy with plenty of hobbies, but it's not a situation that she completely argues about. She doesn't forgive herself any more than anyone else does. So when the alien arrives, it's extremely easy to feel for her in that way because she's a tiny thing. Caitlin Dever, she's a little 5'0" twig of a white girl. A Nerf football would be too extreme for her. Alright, Caitlin's more metal than I am. I'm projecting. What do you want from me? She's no fighter. The danger she faces is very real. So you're just as afraid of them as she is. What adds to the fear is the sound design. You need to experience this with surround sound, or at the very least, headphones. The noises they make are so unsettling. The rapid movement of their footsteps when they get close to Bryn, their physical movements. Sure, you can chalk that up to bad CGI, but frankly, due to the mysterious nature of these things, their twitchy, near stop motion movements adds to their terror. Their expressionless faces and unknowable body language, they're truly terrifying. I might argue that alien diversity is a little lackluster. I mean, I don't see a single BIPOC alien among them or a single dark-skinned alien. I feel like this species is full of ists and phobes and I'm fucking kidding. I'm fucking kidding. The only thing that comes close to a complaint is, well, some of the emotional payoffs. Make no mistake, none are bad at all. But without giving anything away, some of the emotional payoffs could have been better executed. There's 2 of them. Emotional payoff 1, you may not know why it's happening or why Bryn is saying her only dialogue here. That doesn't get its own payoff until the second moment where we finally learned what happened that made her a pariah. I know it doesn't make sense from my words alone, but it feels like these 2 moments should have been switched from a narrative standpoint. But even as is, to keep up the mystery, it's not ineffective, it's just not what I would have chosen. I feel like there's so much to interpret in this, as it's smart enough to let the audience decide for themselves what the story really means. I really hope there's an audience for this. I'm sure as hell going to be recommending it to everyone. It's freaky, it's emotional, and it truly is out of this world. Happy New Year, everybody! Hope it's been a good one for you so far. In any case, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a great one. Stay safe and healthy out there. Hope to see you soon.